and graduated in '88 after having grown up in Idaho Springs, just up the hill. One thing about growing up in Idaho Springs is it's a small town. It's a small town close to Denver. So we had great teachers. So the idea that sort of a good teacher can change your life is something that happened to me without question, both there and here. The other great thing about small town is you get to know people and they get to know you. My grandfather taught in Idaho Springs, and my aunts and uncles lived there, but I had lots of aunts and uncles I wasn't related to. I had lots of grandmothers I wasn't related to, still do. And for me, that was an amazing thing, and something that I didn't realize wasn't actually all that common for a lot of folks. After leaving here, had no idea what I wanted to do, so I went to grad school in Berkeley, PhD program way over my head, frankly, and had no idea how the heck to get out of it. I'd never failed at anything that I wanted to do, and I was failing miserably. Didn't know what to do. Saw a poster on a wall that said, "Teach for America, first year, interesting idea." And I was like, this is how I drop out of grad school without anybody knowing I'm dropping out of grad school. Sounded fascinating to me. It also kind of spoke to the entrepreneur in my soul, which is really sort of an inventor at heart. And the PhD program at Berkeley, while filled with brilliant people, was not a way for me to learn at all. And I didn't know it. I was just used to sort of going along the normal route and feeling successful. So I made a life-changing choice to drop out of grad school that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Both of us are TFA alumni, and it's nice to hear people who take different paths. But there's one thing about being in our world is that we're sort of filled with these sort of Wendy Kopp-like mindsets of like you can change the world. But when I walked into South Central Los Angeles in the first group to Teach for America, I got my tail kicked. I really got my tail kicked hard. I thought I was going to go in and be the best and the brightest and change the world. And really, I did not know what I was doing. But I could hear great teaching through the wall every single day. And I was hungry to just see what the heck she was doing that I wasn't doing. Kids liked me. I was fun. I was organized. I didn't send kids to the principal routinely. So I was a good teacher by and large based on the standards that were the norm sort of in the space. But I knew I wasn't doing enough to change the trajectory of what these kids' lives were likely to be based upon the experience of South Central Los Angeles. I taught 5th grade modified bilingual classroom. I speak no Spanish. That is the modified part. It was literally a formal policy of Los Angeles Unified Schools. Half the kids were African American, spoke no Spanish. Half the kids were from all over the world, spoke primarily Spanish, if only Spanish. And we were somehow supposed to navigate that reality. And I kept looking around like, does this actually make sense to anybody? How can this make sense? How can this be the best way for us to organize public schools for these kids? Because it's certainly not what I had up the hill that prepared me well to come to DU and be successful here. Second year of my experience was Rodney King, and literally everything burnt down around the school in 4 crazy days. And for me, the amazing part wasn't so much that, although it was unbelievable. It was the fact that we went right back to the same old 2 weeks later. We weren't even going to talk about how fragile our social contract is. It was a light switch, which is why I keep doing this. It was like on and then off within hours. We weren't even going to talk about that as a system, as an educational system. And to me, the schooling had a lot to do with the opportunities that kids were having. We were just going to go right back to the norm. We had to get the teachers back in the classrooms. It was going to create stability and safety. And I was like, that is actually what's not happening, and what led to the light switch in large part in my mind. So I was focused, Senator Johnston and a lot of Teach for America folks focused on the who. Let's bring in better who's. Let's see how we can focus on the who. What I was going to ask is a different set of questions. 20 years ago, about that same time as right when Macs were coming out, when Windows were being introduced. And much like the second video, put a mouse on a computer and leave a kid alone. crazy things happen. And for me, it was the operating system metaphor. It was not even so much about technology. It was about, if you change the operating system, look what can happen. If you make it easier to navigate a learning experience, look what can happen. So how can we reorganize around that mindset? And for me, after school was it. If I had this, if I had a handful and not a room full, I was successful every single day as a teacher. A handful, not a room full. It wasn't about me being really unprepared to know how to teach kids in South Central, only half of whom spoke my language. It was about the fact that we were organizing in a way that couldn't possibly make sense for the vast majority of us to be successful. And by and large, most teachers didn't leave. We had crazy turnover in that school. I was one of the veteran teachers by my second year. I was one of the most veteran people on the grade level by the time I left. What wasn't uncommon to the experience. Handful, not a room full after school made tremendous sense, and yet the union folks there were furious with me because I was giving free time that they had worked hard not to have to do. And I didn't understand or appreciate the argument at the time. I was just mad. This is the only time I'm successful. Don't take that away from me. But after my experience and of the 2 years of teaching and Teach for America, it's like there's got to be a better way to organize the basic day so it's a handful, not a room full, as the norm. Is there a way for us to do this without increasing costs? Is there a way for us to do this in the buildings that we already have? Is there a way for us to do this that engages the union and the district in meaningful conversations? And spent 10 years sort of focused on that and a couple other principles. It was really 3 easy ideas. When good teachers have much more time with far fewer kids, good things happen. When good teachers have much more time with great teachers, good things happen. And when kids have much more time linking learning to life, focused on things that are relevant to them, absolutely great things happen. My kids in South Central never got out of this little, they hadn't even been to the beach. I taught 5th grade, they were 12 years old, they'd never been to the beach in Los Angeles. I lived on the beach. I was like, they'd get their homework full of sand half the time. So that was crazy to me. And yet their experience was so isolated that Idaho Springs created a lot more opportunities for me to explore opportunities than what kids living in Los Angeles had. So if we can organize differently, what might that look like? And that became sort of my obsession for 10 years. How do we dramatically increase the percentage of kids and teachers who are successful? And that's what Generation Schools as a nonprofit is sort of organized to do. We're actually not a charter school model, which surprises folks. Because one of the first things that you tend to hear often when you're saying it's time to shift to a new paradigm is, well, you can't change the system and you can't work with the unions. Like there's just no way to do those things, so let's work around all of those and focus on that. And I was like, they're 95% I think of kids now are in schools that are organized with union contracts and that are working within districts. We have to focus on innovating within that sphere if we want to dramatically increase the percentage of teachers who are effective. And so we've been piloting a new model in Brooklyn for the last 4 years, and we'll be bringing our work back to Colorado, which is very exciting for my mom and me, next year. Can we see the video clip? Just to give you a sense of how it comes to life. This is a local news.
Mock press conference to extol Shaquille O'Neal's career prospects.
Can we hear the sound?
They have the month off from their regular classes, something they get twice a year at Brooklyn Generation School, allowing students to learn about college and study careers they're interested in. To make up for the 40 days a year spent on these special courses, the school year goes into July and each day is slightly extended. And this is just one small part of what makes Brooklyn Generation different from other public schools. It's the pilot for a whole new schooling model, one that challenges the academic calendar without raising costs or cutting into teachers' time off.
We've rethought all the basic structures of a school, how time is used, how teachers work. We've created a school where teachers have more time with fewer students and much more collaborative time.
Instead of having 2 months of vacation each summer, teachers at Brooklyn Generation get August off, and then 2 other 3-week breaks mid-year, when their students are in college and career courses. By staggering when the teachers are off, the school year is extended without requiring extra staff or overtime pay. They've also reorganized the day to accommodate longer morning classes with only 16 students and larger afternoon electives. But since it's not a charter school, this all required a special contract with the teachers union.
This school came forth and we were like, whoa, and we said, okay, if you guys can work it out, we're there to support it.
The Department of Education has also been very supportive of the school.
I met with the people from the Generation Schools, and they want to expand. And you know what my response was? You betcha.
Making the Generation model work is not easy, especially for the educators who have to coordinate all of the pieces. But eventually, the Generation Network plans to expand nationally, and already think tanks have taken note of this creative school, saying it might help revolutionize the way educators use time. Lindsay Christ, New York 1.
So we're in a really old building that was designed for 6,000 kids. Craziest idea. Clear Creek County, where I grew up, had 3,000 people, so we could all bring a guest and still fit into the building. It has long failed academically. It's now one of the, before we came in, and Joel Klein said enough with this campus and it needs to be changed. It was the most avoided high school campus in all of New York City. Fewer families chose to send their kids there than anywhere else. There are 16 cops in the building at all times. You know, the hardcore airport security, all that sort of stuff. Certainly not a place where you're inspiring people to dream bigger or work harder or care more. You're preparing them for a very specific set of realities. And yet, kids are hungry, just like the experiences from New Delhi. Like, they're hungry to sort of be successful and to learn and to sort of work with, where I disagree with the computer part solely, and I was a computer teacher. I love computers. I love technology. My iPad is my newest friend. But it was coaches and teachers that I had, and really coaches, drama directors, music directors that I had in Idaho Springs that radically changed my life, that made learning something that was in my head, in my heart, and in my gut, something that I was hungry to explore every day. And so if we organize so that the teacher is doing the kind of thing that only teachers can do great, computers are doing the kinds of things that they can do best, and kids are able to support each other as learners, or they do best. Things happen, great learning happens, but we haven't organized. The first video, sort of chopping things up and all that, is how we've organized school. And all of our systems are organized to support that basic set of assumptions. So we just took everything apart and put it back together differently. And I'm not going to give you a couple examples because then we don't have a lot of time, but I'll tell you some of the benefits of the model. We have a 200-day school year, an 8-hour school day. It doesn't ask the teachers to work a minute longer than they do in the contract, which is why the union was able to get behind us. They have 20 days of training built into their work year now. They have 2 hours of common planning time every day. Class sizes are 30 to 50% smaller in all core courses for every kid every day. Doesn't cost a nickel more, works in the spaces at work. Unions can support it. Literally, all we did was pull everything out of the garage and put things back neatly, and you could all of a sudden drive the car in. There is the capacity to innovate at that level that significantly by not being afraid to change the system, work with the union, and make assumptions that we really can innovate radically by redeploying our existing resources differently. And that's what we've done, or it's what we're working to try to do. Our big question now that we're exploring is, do you have to start from scratch? We started a new school that's sort of growing up. We know that that's a model that can work, but can we do this kind of thinking by working with a current staff and a current school and their current kids and just helping them take all their pieces apart and put them back differently? So we're thrilled to be working in Boulder with a great school called Sanchez Elementary School. We're starting to work with Aurora, and we're hoping to be a part of West High School's transformation here in Denver, which will be more of a phase-in, but around the ideas that contracts aren't barriers to reform, that the funding model, although I don't think Colorado spends nearly enough, but we have to accomplish more with what we're already spending, and we can. And that all of the people who are involved in school can be more successful just by radically changing how we organize. Our school, 20% of the kids entered on grade level. Most of them were destined for anywhere other than greatness based upon track records. 75% are on track for on-time graduation just within 4 years. And in New York, that means you have to pass 5 standardized tests called the Regents exams. So 75% of our kids are passing the Regents exams, not giving up on school, and working to sort of dream bigger, work harder, and care more within the system. and with the union support. So our hope is to sort of now scale up. We're working in Denver because it's a place that's doing great things around labor and management. It's got policy organizations. It's got an institution that's sort of working to change how teachers are trained. Colorado makes perfect sense for us to be here, and we're just really excited to be a part of social innovation in Colorado.